beginning verse 1. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. Having said these things, he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, is not this the man who used to sit and beg? Some said, it is he. Others said, no, but he is like him. He kept saying, I'm the man. So they said to him, then how were your eyes opened? He answered, the man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and received my sight. They said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been formerly blind. It was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. So the Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, he put mud on my eyes, I washed, and I see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others said, how can a man who is a sinner do such signs? There was division amongst them. So they said again to the blind man, what do you say about him, since he has opened your eyes? And he said, he is the prophet. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he now see? His parents answered, we know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But how he now sees we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age, he will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be the Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, he is of age, ask him. For the second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, give glory to God, we know that this man is a sinner. He answered, whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see. They said to him, what did he do to you? How did he open your eyes? And he answered them, I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples? They reviled him, saying, you are his disciple, but we are the disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from. The man answered, why this an amazing thing? You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know the Lord does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They answered him, you were born in utter sin, and you would teach us? And they cast him out. Last week, we've been going over this account for a couple of weeks, but last week we added another layer. We saw Jesus in John chapter 8 go into the temple. And after a long time of teaching who he was and telling the people where he came from heaven, that he was the bread of heaven, that he was the great I am, that before Abraham was, I am. What did the Jews want to do whom he was teaching in the temple? In John chapter 8, last chapter. They wanted to kill him. Specifically, they wanted to stone him with stones. So there's this group in Jerusalem at the end of John chapter 8 that doesn't like Jesus very much. That's an understatement, because they want to kill him. So Jesus conceals himself from this angry mob and goes along with his disciples to the next, drama that unfolds in the Gospel of John, all right? And as they're walking along, they see a blind man, a blind beggar, who was blind from birth. The disciples, when they see the blind man who is blind from birth, they immediately want to help him and console him and do all kinds of ministry for him. No. What do they say when they see the blind man? Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born that way? So the disciples, when they see the predicament of the blind man, they want to talk about the reasoning behind all these things. They want to know how and why and all that stuff. And they kind of just stare at the guy. You can kind of, just see them like they're staring at a painting going, who sinned? This man or his parents that he was born blind like that? Very cold reaction to the things that were going on when it comes to the blind man, who obviously was in need because he was what? He was not just blind from birth, he was also a beggar. So not only that, but the Jewish culture around him thought that God was punishing him with his blindness for some sin that he committed or that his parents committed. So in other words, this guy was like having the spiritual plague. This man was guilty of some sin, or his parents were guilty of some sin. That was the mindset of the disciples because they reveal their mindset when it comes to asking the questions. That was the mindset behind the Jewish culture as a whole. There was not a whole lot of compassion for this blind man, and he tells the disciples, Jesus does, it was not that this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed through him. Now, in chapter 9, verse 14, we find out that all these events happened on what day? The Sabbath day, okay? So Jesus sees this blind man. He was born blind, has never seen anything in his life. He's not like me, who just has bad eyesight and has to have corrective lenses. This man has never seen anything his entire life. He was born blind. Jesus, in a rather stomach-churning, probably medically frowned upon way, what did he do when it came to the process of healing this blind man? He spit on the ground, made mud with his saliva. Okay, chapter 9 and verse 6. We went over the traditions last week of the Jews that they added to the laws of God that became doctrine when it came to Jewish rituals and Jewish religious activities. I think you showed me the book, written about the Mishnah. Yeah, and the Mishnah was this